What's up YouTube, Ventmare here. Had a couple of requests to do this now that the tutorial videos are over. I'm going to be going over how to build a deck, and I really want to stress how enjoyable this game really is. It's very simple to build a deck. These are all of the separate components that can go into a deck. You've got attack cards, you've got your form changes, you have your world, you have equipments, magic cards, magic friend cards, friends, dark heartless, and nobodies, your player cards, and your singular event that was only ever released. So I'm going to be going over these separately, well, all in this one video. I'm hoping not to go over 25 minutes so I don't have to split this into two parts because my camera likes to be stupid and shut a video off at 25 minutes. But I'm wanting to go over this because people have been requesting how to build a deck advice, because there are some people that have cards but they don't know exactly how to put them together into one cumulative form as a deck. So let's go ahead and start with the biggest basis of the entire deck, which is your player card. Picking a player card, I mean, it's important, but it's not as hugely important as the separate components that actually go into making the deck itself to help support the player card. So, going into the player cards, there's a bunch of different player cards. Like, there's a ton, and this is only a few. There's a bunch of commons, there's a bunch of uncommon ones. I went ahead and grabbed the main ones that you'd be able to see more often than others. Let's just go ahead and go with the main character of the entire game, which is Sora. These are the only two actual, like, world-based cards that we actually got. Which is the Mermaid Sora and the Halloween Town Sora. So if you're wanting to build Little Mermaid or Halloween Town, there is a player card just for that deck. Now, just because you're wanting to build Halloween Town or Little Mermaid does not mean you have to use these player cards. You could use Riku, or that Riku, or these two Soras. I mean, you do not have to play the world-specific player card. But if you're wanting an aesthetic kind of thing like I do, you can play that specific world outfit Sora, or costumed player card. But like I said, you don't have to. These are really, mainly, it's just kind of a player preference when it comes to your player card, how you're wanting to build the entire deck itself. So, let's get those put away since we are not going to need those anymore. Now we can go on to some more just basic player cards. I'll go into these. They're the more complex player cards here in a second. These are just your basic player cards. They have their level over here. Your level really doesn't matter except for a couple of effects on cards. The level does not affect anything in-game. It does not affect anything otherwise. It really doesn't. It doesn't affect how many friends you can play Heartless, anything. It's just kind of, here's your level 2, here's your level 3. It's just kind of a look of age, I guess you could say, or intensity on the player's face. And your HP is over here, which on the promos, it's down here in the bottom right. His is 7, this one's 5. So picking your player card all comes down to your preference of, do you want a higher health but a little bit lower of attack, or do you want lower attack, higher health? It just comes down to your preference of not only the look of the player card, but what the player card does on its own. So these are just a couple of the basic player cards. So if you're wanting player cards, there's a wide selection of commons, uncommons, there's a couple of rares, there's promos like Riku that you can choose from to be your player card. So we can go ahead and get these out of the way. Now we're going to get into the three more complex player cards. One of them being Dark Riku. Dark Riku states that you cannot play anything but dark cards into your friend area. So that means all of your dark cards have to be dark Heartless or dark Villain cards to be played into his friend area. But, as I was saying in the one video, when you play a dark Riku, or dark, Ansem, or whatever, they do ignore the unique card rule. The unique card rule being that you can only have one friend of the exact same name, no matter what level it is, in your friend area at a time. So with normal player cards, you could only have one level 1 Donald. You can't have a level 1 and a level 3 Donald in play at the same time. You have to only control one of the same name at a time. With the dark player cards such as Dark Riku or Ansem, you ignore that. So you could play 3 Jafar in your friend area, or 3 Shadow, 3 Bouncy Wilds. Things like that can be played. Honestly, Dark Riku is better than Ansem, just for the fact that Dark Riku can play his equipment, since he is named Riku. He can play his equipment of Soul Eater. He can also play attack cards, where Ansem cannot. He is 1 lower on attack and magic than Ansem, but he's still, and 1 health lower, but he's still better for the fact that you can protect yourself with attack cards and not just rely on your Heartless. So, Dark Riku is a really good player card if you're wanting to build a Dark Heartless deck, which... Next video that I make will be, I'm going to be posting up a trade proof video for one of the ones I just finished out on a trade. He was really cool. Picked up a bunch of promos from him. He's been commenting and helping out with some videos and stuff, and helping me get some more stuff for this game. I'll be making a trade proof video. I'll probably just upload that either right after this video or tomorrow. Because it's only a minute-long video. And then the next video I will upload will probably be Sunday after this, which will be my tutorial for a Dark Heartless deck, because the most complicated deck in the entire game of Kingdom Hearts is the Dark Heartless deck, because it's a very complex, ruled, and effect-oriented deck. So I want to show you guys how to build that with my own personal build. Next one is Roxas. I went over this when I did the, when I made the actual, when I showed my deck profile for this. Roxas does not ignore the unique card rule, and he can also only play Samurai and Twilight Town friends in his friend area. So, but Roxas is still one of the best decks that you could build. It's just getting a hold of Roxas is a little more difficult, because you are guaranteed the entire set of Break of Dawn in 1 box. Problem is they even announced right when the game was finishing out, Roxas is not a guarantee per box. So if you get one, it's kind of a 50-50 shot if you were supposed to get one in your box or not. So it just kind of comes down to that. And then you have your basic Organization 13 player card, which is Zaldin, or you have Axel as well, where these do ignore the unique card rule, and you can only play Organization, you can play Player 13 and Nobody cards only in your friend area. Meaning you could play a Roxas in Zaldin's friend area, or you could play Axel in Zaldin's friend area, but where Roxas, you could not play Zaldin or Axel in Roxas's friend area. This one, the Axel Zaldin deck is a little more difficult to play because there's so many uncommons that you have to pick up for the deck, and you're only guaranteed a certain amount of the commons in the box. Picking up everything for the deck is a little more difficult. Like, I don't even have everything for the box, or for this deck, and it makes me really sad because I want to build the deck. Once I get everything for the deck, I will let you guys, I'll show it off because it's a really fun looking deck. But he can only play Nobodies, and he can play any Nobodies, unlike Roxas where he can only play Samurai. He can play any Nobodies and any Player 13, which there's only, other than him, 2 other Player 13 that we got in America. Again, makes me sad. So those are the player cards that you can play in your choose from. Those are the player cards that you have to choose from. Like I said, it all comes down to player preference of how you want to build your deck. The light player cards such as Riku and Sora, can play any friends in their friend area except Dark and Nobody's. And the Dark Riku can only play Dark cards, and Zaldin and Axel can only play, or the Player 13 cards can only play Nobody's and or other Player 13 cards in their friend area. Let's go ahead and get into the forms. The forms you don't have to play. They're just kind of a booster and an accentuation on how you want to make your point. If you're making a World Racer deck, Wisdom form is great because every time you get to not only draw an extra card during your draw phase, so you get to draw your hand up to 7 instead of 6 with the Wisdom form. All magic damage done to Heartless on Worlds is doubled. So if you play a Faraga off of this, you're doing 14 damage to a Heartless instead of just 7. So that helps get Heartless off your world faster. So that way you can play down more worlds in World Race. The only thing is when you play this, you have to only be playing Sora as your player card. Either of these, you have to have Sora as your player card. And with Wisdom form, you have to discard a Donald Duck from your friend area and a card from your hand to be able to play this over your current friend card. And this one is kind of the same. Discard a card from your hand and discard a Goofy card from your hand. Now this one, when you win a battle, your opponent takes 1 additional health damage. And along with that, you can equip up to 2 equipment cards, whereas you can normally only equip 1 equipment. And if you lose a challenge with your Valor form Sora as part of that's your main player at this point, you have to discard the Valor form, which that kind of sucks, but I mean it makes sense. He's supposed to be the Battle King. Let's go ahead and get into let's just go over the event card really quick. The event card was a box topper and given out as a reward, as a tournament entry for a while. All it does is it says all players take 1 health damage. You can only play 1 per deck. That's about all that does. So it kind of helps, like, if your opponent's at 1 health, play it, you win. Let's go ahead and go over friend cards first and foremost. Supporting friend cards are different between worlds. If you're playing Aladdin, you're obviously going to play Aladdin, and you're going to play Genie. Because this deck is based on attack, you're always going to want to play Goofy with that deck. Goofy is a big attack-oriented. He has 0 magic on most of his, and he has really high supporting attack. So with attack-based decks, you're a lot of times going to want to go with Goofy because most of his Goofies, the level 3 lets you draw a card to try to search for your attack cards, and if you get the Darkness Awakened level 4 Goofy, every time a Darkness Awakened level 4 Goofy is played, you search your deck for an attack card and add it to your hand, which is amazing. So that's one of the big things you can choose when it comes to attack-based decks. Is attack and magic-based decks, your biggest 2 supporters are always Goofy and Donald. Donald is magic, Goofy is always attack-based. So those are your big choices. Am I going to play a Jack of all trades where I can play both? Am I going to play World Racer where I want to play Donald to pop Heartless with magic? Or am I going to play Rushdown where I'm going to try to do as much damage to my opponent as I can every turn, which most of the time maximum is 2 because of form or Riku's Soul Eater, but making sure that I am not getting beat over every time. So Goofy and Donald are your big supporters for World Racer and Rushdown. And if you're playing Jack of all trades, which can do either, you can play both. A couple of the big supporting cards, like Pegasus, is a huge supporting card for Olympus Coliseum. While this card's in play, every time you play an Olympus Coliseum card, you draw a card. That's amazing. You just draw a card every time. So it's a simple thing like that. Look at what deck you're wanting to build. Look at how it goes when you're wanting to put it together. Because as soon as you put the deck together, you're going to want to look for supporting friends like Pegasus, or with Aladdin you're supporting things are like Genie and Jasmine. So look around when you're doing it, and you can always see what supporting cards there are for a deck. As I was saying with level 4s, they changed one of the level 4s with Goofy. Goofy, when this level 4 comes into play, you search your deck for a Valor form. So when you're wanting to do an aggro deck, you could play either of the level 4s, and it's really good. This Donald kept its effect from the Darkness Awakened one, where you still search your deck for any magic card and add it to your hand. So those are a couple of big supporting cards you can play. Moogle is one of the biggest supporting friend cards in the entire game. Moogle says each player can play friend cards of any level into play from their hand. I get that your opponent gets the bonus off of it, but if you can play this very well, if you have a Heartless on your world, you can get rid of it by using this, negging yourself, but if you know you're going to beat that Heartless anyway, that neg makes sure that you've played your hand very well, and your opponent then, after they see the Moogle, thinks they're going to be able to play, but then once you get rid of your own Moogle, they have to make sure that they can play very well to get to stand up against what you've just played. So Moogle is one of the biggest supporting player or friend cards in the entire game. Chippendale is a great friend card. If you've already exhausted things that you know you're gonna need like next turn, you can play Chippendale, discard it, remove it from the game, and then shuffle all of your discarded cards back into your deck. So you shuffle your discard pile back into your deck. Chippendale is amazing. Yeah, you can only use his effect once per game because it removes itself as soon as you use its effect, but Chippendale. If you've exhausted things you know you're going to want more of, you just keep plussing off of Chippendale. Sid is a great promo. Promos, you can only play one of the exact same named promo per deck. You can play multiple promos per deck, but you can only play one of each promo per deck. Sid, you discard him and as many cards from your hand as you want, and then draw that same amount of cards that you personally discarded from your hand. So Sid's really good. So he can help you, like after you Chippendale, you can play Sid, draw cards to try to get back what you wanted. If you're wanting to kind of slow roll your opponent, you can play Alice, because at the end of each player's discard phase, all players must discard a friend from their friend area. So her effect is great, because you can make sure that if your opponent is sitting on a singular Sephiroth or a singular Cloud, they have to discard it. So she's really good to control your opponent. Mickey Mouse is a big supporter for either deck, for the World Racer or aggro deck, because Mickey Mouse specifically states that only you can play Donald Duck or Goofy of any level. So Mickey Mouse is splashable in either World Racer or aggro deck, or especially Jack of all trades. So because only the controlling player of this Mickey gets its effect, unlike Moogle, where both players get Moogle's effect. And then you get into things like Peter Pan, where Peter Pan is a Heartless effect negation, which shuts down stupid things like these, because Stealth Sneak is still one of the dumbest Heartless in the game. Peter Pan states, when this card participates in a battle, negate the effects of all Heartless on the world that this card is participating in. So if you have like 3 Heartless on your world that are really stacked up effects like Cerberus, Stealth Sneak, and even Cave of Wonders Guardian, you play Peter Pan in that battle, all 3 of their effects are negated, and you're popping Stealth Sneak and probably the other 2 cards very simply. So Peter Pan's a really good option if you're really wanting to build a World Racer deck. Peter Pan's a really good option as just even to throw in or a full playset of level 1 Peter Pans, just because when you're fighting Heartless, he becomes a throwaway friend. He's never used for battles. Or, sorry, challenges. Now I'm going to go ahead and get into Magic Friends. Magic Friends are a different kind of support that you have to play off of their magic value first when they're in their hand, or first when they're in your hand. I was explaining this during the action phase kind of tutorial. You have to play off of one specific friend or your player card's magic value. Now you can't combine magic values of your player card or friend cards to try to equal this. You have to play this off of a singular friend or your player card. In hand, these count themselves as magic cards, and then when they come into play, you count them as friends, so you can play off of their level. So, a couple of the really good options that are just really splashable in any deck are Tinkerbell, Simba, and Bambi. Bambi, level 3, you draw 2 cards. Bambi, level 4, you draw 2 cards. Bambi, level 2 and 1, you only draw 1 card when he comes into play. There is a limit of only 3 Bambi, so you can only play a combination of any level Bambis, but only 3 of them. So you can play 3 level 3s, 1 level 1, 1 level 2, 1 level 3, any combination of levels of Bambi, but you can only play a total in any deck of 3 Bambi. Same with Simba. He's the same kind of limit, 3 Simba total. Now when Simba comes into play, each player must choose and discard a friend card or magic friend card that they control. Which, I think it's funny that it says magic friend, because if you're playing it, your opponent's not going to be able to discard a magic friend because they wouldn't have been able to play one. But you can discard Simba off of it, but he has to be your first choice has to be another friend. I believe he actually states discard a friend or magic friend he or she controls. So, how Simba was ruled, if you come into play off of it, you have to choose another card other than Simba first. It's a weird ruling on Simba. But Simba, when he comes into play, so if you only control the friend card that you played him off of, you have to discard the friend card that you played him off of first. And then Tinkerbell is really good for World Racer decks to try to keep your health high so your opponent's not beating you by aggro. When she comes into play, you regain 2 health. So, those are a couple of the really good magic friend cards. And then you have Genie. Genie level 4 is the exact same as Donald. You choose a magic card from your deck and put it into your hand. Genie's really good. But Genie can only be played with Aladdin. So, which kind of makes sense. I mean, it makes complete sense. Let's go ahead and get into magic cards. You have 3 different kinds of magic cards. You have Heartless-based kills, you have health regain, and then you have friend-targeted magic cards. Friend-targeted are like Gravity, Gravera, and Graviga. They help you take out your opponent's friend cards so you can beat over them for health damage. Cure, Cura, and Curaga all heal you. That's basic that. And then you have all of the different Blizzard, Thunder, and Fire that do damage to Heartless. But again, you have to have enough magic off of one of your friends or your player card to be able to play any of these magics. So, magic cards are really good in any deck, including aggro, as long as you've got it. Like, if you're going to play aggro and you want to play magic cards, Aladdin is your best bet because Genie has a really good magic support value. So playing these is really good to help you even world race, or at least just get the Heartless off your world. And then you have Stop. This is the only magic card that can be played during your challenge phase. When you play it, you end the challenge phase immediately and you calculate how much each player has right then. So Stop isn't one of the best magic cards in the game, but if you're going for aggro, you could play it just to stop your opponent from playing anymore. So let's go ahead and get into equipments. Equipments have specific states on each one of them. Most of them can only be played on a player light or Sora or Riku. Like, each one states a different thing. it just kind of depends on what each one does, how you want to play it. Kingdom Key is really good against going against Ansem because you subtract your player level from your opponent's player level and do that much damage to them as their heart points. So if you play this first turn and you win that battle, that challenge against your opponent, you just won against an Ansem deck because Ansem is level 10. If you're a level 3 or even lower, you're doing 7 minimum damage to an Ansem, and that beats your opponent. So Kingdom Key is really good for certain decks because you can only play it on player light cards. Wishing Lamp is one of those supporting cards I was talking about where it supports that specific deck. Wishing Lamp specifically helps Agrabah friends. And then Oblivion is, you can play it as a second equipment if your player card is a Mysterious Boy or Roxas, or Sora can equip it. But you can play this as a second one by discarding a card from your hand and equipping it to the Roxas. Now, you can play this as a second equipment on a Sora like Valor form without having to discard, but to play this as a second equipment onto Roxas, you have to discard a card from your hand. We'll go into attack cards. Attack cards literally are there just to support you beating out your opponent on health. That's it. These are here just to beat your opponent's Heartless. Sorry, to help you beat Heartless that are on Worlds, and things like this are a couple of effects that help you when you beat Heartless on your world. This one, when you beat a Heartless on your world, you gain a health. This one, you draw 2 cards if it's used in a successful battle against Heartless. So either one of these is really, really good. Then you have these, which just really support. Soul Eater is specific only to Riku decks, and it helps you deal an additional damage to your opponent. So it's an extra added bonus of aggro. Oblivion is, other than Ultima, the highest attacking Keyblade attack card in the game, whereas you can splash it as a limit 1 in any deck, and it's a +10 at any point.